Do you think the Niners are jumping the gun with Brock Purdy like they did with Jimmy Garoppolo in 2017? Real quick, Kyle's trying to act like, we're being open-minded here. Brock's been great, but it's early. John Lynch was like, we think this guy's special. We think he's a guy. And Matt Mayoko was like, yo, man, I mean, a lot of quarterbacks have looked good for 8 games and the league catches up to him. Like, why do you think Brock's different? And Lynch is like, because it's the way he played in those 8 games. It's the way he played. So they're like, at least Lynch is all in the way they. It sounds like if they could give Brock Purdy $400 million or whatever it would take, they might. Right? Fortunately, they can't. What do you think of that?
I think I wouldn't say jumping the gun yet, because again, the difference between what Jimmy did versus what Brock did is one was on a playoff team, the other one was on a very, 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 very dumpster fire team against poor opponents, and the difference between the two is like night and day. I mean, the fact that and Purdy was a rookie. He was a rookie who took no reps, no live team reps like that. So you're going into the situation where you barely have any synchronization. You're not getting the reps. You went out there with the weight of a playoff team, and you reeled off this many wins. But most of all, you actually factored into those wins and played well and uplifted the offense. So that's why it's like I don't think it's the same thing in that sense. The only correlation is like limited sample size, and then he's taking over. And I do agree. Like I think he probably will end up getting figured out next year because number one, there's tape on him right now. There's a whole offseason people are going to figure out. Number two, he's not getting better. He's not spending this offseason to get better. He's spending this offseason to get back to where he was. So all the same miscues, all the same flaws that people are going to spot in those 8 games that he played, they're going to probably most likely come to light, and people are going to key in on that. So that's why I have also him. I wrote last month about players who could probably find themselves on a downward slope this upcoming year. I have Purdy as one of them because of that exact same reason. He's not going to be able to improve himself, and people are going to know what to look for because all this is going to be the men. Plus, is he even going to be close to that? That's still the thing to be seen with his elbow. So I think in that sense, the Niners are jumping the gun because now the guy's injured, and you guys are crowning a guy who's injured.
Yeah,
we've been down this route before when you're still continuously trying to hammer the door for a guy who's been injured with Jimmy. So that's the similarities I see in this sense. Not so much to 2017, but in that sense, remaining committed to a guy who's injured. But I guess in this sense, they're hoping, it's a fluke, or worse comes to worse. That's why we have Trey and Darnold to hopefully get us over.
I feel like John and Kyle think of the quarterback position differently. I think John is all in with Brock. The way he talked, like the way he played, he's special. Like Kyle is much more like, I think he's like, I don't really care who my quarterback is, honestly. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're totally replaceable. If Brock can do it, then Sam can do it. I think that's his attitude. If Brock can do it, then freaking Sam can do it. And if Trey can't do it, then he's trash. I think that's the way Kyle Shanahan looks at it. I think John's the one who's hot and heavy to like declare a guy a special guy. I don't know why, but it's like they want to project. They want to say, oh, we've seen it. And they keep doing it. It was like, we saw 5 games of Jimmy Garoppolo. We're so smart and perceptive. We can see the future. We saw 1 season of Trey Lance at North Dakota State. We're so smart and perceptive. We can see the future. We saw 8 games of Brock Purdy. It's like, guys, you keep making the same mistake. Like, you don't have to project the future. You can just let it play out. In retrospect, with Jimmy, they could have franchise tagged him. If they had done that, just for the sake of let's buy some time and some evidence. Buy time, evidence, all that. So we don't have to make a decision based on a projection, based off very little evidence. They didn't do that. They never do that. So that's a problem. I can't predict the future. Neither can they.
Not off a limited sample size. I'd get a case if you're like, okay, we have all this data. It's enough. It's like, okay, he played 3 years. Like, I get you. I see I see where your heart's at. And if you fail, it'd be like, okay, it makes sense. But on a limited sample size, like I have people in my family who's just like, oh, I saw something 1 or twice, so I think that's what I'm like, what? Come on,
yeah, exactly.
I'm personally, I'm always like someone who I need like adequate data amounts. That's why I was like, if it wasn't for this field, I was gonna be a stats major, statistics major. I love the numbers and just like law of large numbers, just like getting all that probability at. Maybe that's why I like craps. But I'd say, but they do the same thing, not even just with those players you mentioned, Jimmy, Brock, Trey. They do that with youngsters on the defense. It's like, oh, Samuel Womack, 1 bad stretch against the Bears. Pull him. Jimmy, get back in there. Ward.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
So why does one bad thing define these players? Why does one good stretch,
one good or bad, like 5-game stretch for Jimmy Garoppolo gets him a 7-year, like a 6-year tenure with the 49ers, like all based off that one stretch, which is like,
imagine if Kyle was a baseball manager.
Yeah.
My God, he's like, oh my God, he got shelled in one at bat, pull, relief pitcher. Like, what?
True.
What are you doing?
Very reactive, extremely reactive, and caught in the moment.
But that's also a typical thing for most head coaches too, right? Is that they're so irrational in that way. They're so impulsive, and it's like they always got the binoculars on, the telescope vision. They don't really see everything past. They don't see the whole forest for the trees. They just see like the singular few tree. That's just always their thing. They don't project.
Also, like, developing a quarterback isn't like instant grits. Like, it takes time, and it's a little bit of a process. And you got to be committed to it. And the Niners are not committed to that process. No. They want a quarterback. To be the quarterback of the Niners, you have to have instant success. And if you don't, you're out. Dude, so many Hall of Fame quarterbacks didn't have instant success. So many of them. I mean, it takes time for a lot of guys, and the Niners aren't committed to it. So they're always going to be searching for the next Kirk Cousins. You know what I'm saying?
Since we're on this topic, it's the same thing with the Jimmy, right? Like, they, after 5 games, they saw like, wow, okay, that's enough for us. And it's like, it's rather going that route of something we know we can build upon versus I'd rather try to get something new and figure it out all over again. It's like, no, it's like, it's almost being lazy. It's being lazy in a sense. Like, I have this cheat sheet right here. I already know some of the answers. I'd rather know some of the answers than restudy a new book and a new test, which is this year's Trey Lance. I'd rather have
Jimmy. With Jimmy, during the 5-game win streak, we saw like he was not Brett Favre. Like, he was a modest quarterback. They were winning with field goals and stuff. But when it was like, okay, they're winning, and he needs no development. He's fully developed, and the Niners are like, that's all we want. He did not look like a top 5 quarterback or like the next Joe Montana, but they won, and you know, he didn't need any freaking development. So that's what the Niners want. That's what Kirk Cousins was going to be.
This is why I go back to the side-by-side comparison. It's like what the fact that he played after all those mediocre quarterbacks, it props him up more. It's not just the fans who fell in love with Jimmy because they were stranded in the desert and Jimmy was that fresh glass of water that really just got them. It's the fact that what they saw, and then with him after, it's like, wow, that's what's supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, it's supposed to look like that, but you can still do better. But again, when you hit the side-by-side, it's like, you know, it props them up more than what you should be. And again, it's like, I'd rather have already like some of the 25-30% done of the work than redo all that 30% work, go back to square one with Trey Lance. I'd rather have, you know, baseball terms again, I'd rather be on second base with Brock Purdy than be stuck back at home with Trey Lance. It's where he's at.
Jimmy looked like a franchise quarterback in comparison to CJ Beathard and Brian Hoyer.
Yes.
And Brock Purdy looked like a franchise quarterback in comparison to Jimmy Garoppolo. Yep. But these are all very low bars. You know what I'm saying?
What it is. Yep.
And it's like, well, then Trey Lance, what does that make Trey Lance? It makes Trey Lance a project that we all knew. And he was never going to be setting the world on fire right away. And if you thought he would, then you're so stupid for drafting him. Mm-hmm. Dark Halo 2 times says BP is their plan at quarterback because of injury. It's flimsy. That's a good point. The Niners' plans are meaningless because they're not rooted in reality. What's rooted in reality is the eventual injuries that creep up. So we'll see how they react when those happen. Henry Como says, I hate this for Trey, but do you trade Trey with Danny Gray to get a first-round pick? I don't think you would get you ain't getting a first-round pick. Sorry. B&A Harris says, life is crazy like that sometimes. My bad, folks. I don't get it.
I think he's the one that said the the Sam Darnold comment.